Hi, it's Danny. This video is going to show you how to use your words, so your 4 nouns, your 4 adjectives, your 4 verbs and your 4 adverbs in the actual exam. So don't forget that at home you'll have this which you'll be continually revising from, which has 4 word types on it, and each of those word types have 4 words that you have memorised. And you're going to try and use those in your exam. It might be that you can only use 3 nouns or 2 verbs, 4 adjectives and 4 adverbs. That's okay. You're trying to get as many in as you can, but obviously don't put them in if they don't fit. So I'll show you what to do in the exam, but this is also showing you how to revise at home. So when you are revising, you are practicing using these words in a variety of different questions. So let's have a look at one type of question. So on your kind of question paper, you will have a question. So I've written one out here. It's write a story about a time you felt danger. And it would take you about 41 seconds, 45 seconds maybe, to write your words down when you sit down in the exam. So that would be the first thing you would do as soon as you're allowed to open your paper. Then you'd go off for an hour, do your reading questions, if you want to do your reading questions first, and then you would come back and your words would all be here. It might be that it has been suggested that you do the writing question first, in which case you would just crack on. The benefit of having these 16 words that you go into the exam having memorised is that you don't start with a blank page. So you'll get your question, you'll decide what you're going to write, and you will have 16 words that you are going to get into your writing, and that's going to give you lots of inspiration. So when I get in there, as well as having my 16 words that I know I'm going to use and that are going to give me inspiration, I also know that I need to plan. So I'm looking at this and it says, write a story about a time you felt danger. Okay, so I know that the 5 things I need to plan to answer this are mood, characters, beginning, middle, end. Now I know that this isn't maybe how I taught it to you, the correct order, but when you're in the exam, you're not judged on order. This is just something to help you. So, you know, just write it as you remember it. Okay. Techniques I should try and put at the end because it's just a bit longer. You need bigger space to write it on. Okay, so let's have a look. Now we know that we've got to indicate a time when you felt danger, right? Okay, so I'm going to think a story about danger. So my mood is going to be one of threat and danger. They've already given that to us. That's kind of easy to work out. Now I've got to think of a really interesting perspective, something that is dangerous. So everybody is susceptible to danger, but actually I don't want to sit in my exam where I'm already feeling stressed, writing about humans encountering danger. So do you know what I'm gonna make it from a really unusual perspective, and I'm gonna write it from the perspective of a horse with a rider. And just to make it even more unusual, I'm going to choose first person. No, actually I'm going to do third person because obviously my horse wouldn't have an internal monologue with the same language I would, so it's got to be third person. Beginning, middle, end. I don't know, but I do know that I want my setting to be maybe like a forest. And then maybe the forest actually gives me an idea, which is my beginning, I think, is going to be a pleasant ride, right? Because you've got to have something nice at the beginning and build up the sense of threat. Then in the middle, I'm going to have maybe my rider faints. Okay. And then at the end, I call for help. That leaves it ambiguous. I can decide later on whether that call for help is answered or not. So, techniques. Let's do a simile. If my rider's going to faint, we could have something about falling, like an avalanche. I don't know how to spell avalanche, but I do know that I think that's right, and I know that my reader will get it and that they'll be impressed with my simile. Okay, so falling like an avalanche. What else could we use? Hyperbole. So when you're stressed, you tend to think in exaggeration, so hyperbole is probably a good one. So maybe we could say, oh goodness, I'm not a great natural writer. This is why I suggest having techniques before you go in there. If you don't have them, that's fine. But if you do have them, then obviously it's better because you don't have to sit and think about them. But let's say hyperbole, I'm going to do, I felt, he felt, because I'm going to write it in third person, he was plunging to the bottom of an ocean. So that could be, you know, him feeling, the horse feeling panic, or it could be the guy who's fainted. So it's nice and open, I think, yeah? Then what else could we do that's a technique? So we could also do alliteration. Oh, repetition. Because of your panic, you're likely to repeat yourself. So we could do it with a slightly different bent. So we could do help me, help him. Oh, I've made my horse rider a male. Help us. Then I get my nice repetition of exclamation marks as well. And alliteration, let's say, the end evaporated into emptiness. That's a bit vague, but I'm going to make it fit in. And then for my last one, so we need 5. Simile, hyperbole, alliteration, metaphor. What's another good one? Might be contrast. I love contrast. I shivered in the blinding heat. There's a contrast for you. Okay, so we've got our ideas. We must remember our punctuation, so I'm going to write it down. Not very well. Exclamation mark, full stop. I want to use a semicolon. I want to try and use brackets. I want to use a dash. I want to use an exclamation mark, oops, which I've already put, and I want to use a question mark. Okay, so that's cool. And I also want to make sure I've got a hook. I'm going to add that there. A 1-line paragraph, so I'm going to add that there. And I also want to make sure that I also have a link, end, and beginning. Okay, brilliant. So now I'm all planned, I can actually start to write. Okay, so I won't show you me writing everything, but we can go through how I would start it and how I would use all of this stuff, right? So the first thing I'm trying to do is a hook, because that's at the beginning, and I know from my plan that I'm going to begin in the middle of a pleasant ride. Okay, and it's from the perspective of a horse, so I have to make that clear pretty quickly because that's an unusual perspective. So I'm going to say horse and rider felt at one. And that is a nice kind of peaceful beginning. And it also gives you the impression that this is going to be from the perspective of a rider, which I'm then going to undercut. Now, obviously, that's not a very good hook. So I'm going to add a dash, which gets one of my punctuation in there. And I'm going to add that was about to change. Exclamation mark. Okay, so not only have I introduced my main characters, added a few bits of good punctuation, I've also set up this kind of mood of threat, which is what we're trying to get. So I can actually cross some of these off. So let's get a different colour. Oh, actually, do you know, in the exam, I would be taking in a highlighter and you can cross them off and it looks really good. So you've got your threat in there and you're setting up your beginning. All right. So let's now try and get some of these words in. So, peace would be a good one, right? We can add the peace of the forest was about to be lost forever. That's a nice dramatic opening, and I've got my I've got the sense that they're having a pleasant ride, but also I've added in the idea that it was about to change. Okay, so let's show now that we're writing from the perspective of a horse. The horse's nostrils, I hear they're pretty big, so that's interesting, flared with fear. Ooh, getting a little bit of extra alliteration in there, so that's quite good. The horse's nostrils flared with fear, semicolon. He listened, to the, oh, I'm looking at my words and I'm thinking, ooh, what can I put in there? So I've already got peace, brilliant. I'm going to try and use one of, oh, here you go. He listened to the abundant noises of the forest. He could feel his rider's legs. So it's definitely from the horse's perspective now. Forcefully, which is another of my words, yay. Push into his flesh, urging him to go even faster. Okay, so we've got abundant. We've also done pretty well on our punctuation, right? Because we've got semicolon, dash, exclamation mark. We're doing well. And I've used my full stops correctly. Okay, so my rider hasn't fallen off yet. Do I want to add that now? Well, can I add any of these? No, because these are all a bit dramatic, right? So we don't want to add in our techniques yet because they're too dramatic, but we've already got a few. We've got contrast with about to change. The horse's nostrils flared with fear. We've got alliteration. We've got our adverb with forcefully, so that's pretty good. Oh, and we've got forcefully, flesh, and faster, so that's alliteration without even realising it, so that's brilliant. So let's just write one more paragraph together. Okay, so let's start the middle bit. Let's do the bit where he falls off, because that's the bit that's really interesting, right? So we want to add something like suddenly, but suddenly is a bit boring. All of a sudden, still boring. It would be better. Do you know what? We've got the word dramatically. The weight suddenly vanished. No, that doesn't make sense, right? So actually I'm like, no, I don't like that. But I like the idea. So let's just go, the weight suddenly vanished. That is good, okay. And I'm going to put another exclamation mark. The horse skidded dramatically, so I do want to get that word in there, to a halt. Okay, so got dramatically in there, that's brilliant. What next? The emptiness of his saddle was a greater weight than his rider had ever been. Okay. As he looked backwards, let's say as he looked back, he saw his rider collapsed on the floor. I sense a chance to get in another word, so he raced back to try and revive him. So we've got our word revive. In his panic, the horse felt as though there's only one of him, plunging to the bottom of an ocean. His heart fell like an avalanche. Dramatic. Okay, so I have written my story. The whole thing is finished, so let's have a read through. Horse and rider felt at one.
That was about to change. The peace of the forest was about to be lost forever. The horse's nostrils flared with fear. He listened to the abundant noises of the forest. He could feel his rider's legs forcefully push into his flesh, urging him to go even faster. The weight suddenly vanished. The horse skidded dramatically to a halt. The emptiness of his saddle was a greater weight than his rider had ever been. As he looked back, he saw his rider collapsed on the floor. He raced back to try and revive him. In his panic, the horse felt as though he was plunging to the bottom of an ocean. His heart felt like an avalanche. "Help me! Help him! Help us!" the horse pleaded silently. The power of his rider had been erased. In this obscure forest, he lay weak and dying. The horse shivered in the blinding heat. The rider's life threatened to evaporate into emptiness. However, he clung stubbornly to life. In competition with the pull of oblivion, he held his nerve and won. The horse felt him shiver back to life. His rider was unique, and he loved him. He nuzzled his rider's hand and felt his fingers flicker up, grazing his nose. Even death could not corrupt the strength of their bond. Rider and horse lay as one, both clinging on to life as they waited for help to arrive. Okay, so horse and rider felt...
So we'll look through my piece of writing now that I completed once I stopped filming. What you'll notice is that it's colour-coded. So in green are the words that I was planning to use, that I've tried to use in there. In pink is the stuff that I was planning to use, so all of my techniques, but also my hook and my link to the end and the beginning. And I've also put in orange anything that I kind of think, oh, that would get me marks, but I didn't plan to use it. And then the final colour coding is yellow for punctuation. So look out for yellow for punctuation, green for our planned words, orange for words that weren't planned but sound good. There's also a few techniques that I put in orange because I wasn't planning to use them, but they sound okay. And then in pink is all our techniques that we were planning to use.
Okay, so at the beginning I've got my hook, which is that the horse and the rider feel comfortable with each other, but that's about to change, so that kind of is like adding tension. You can see that I've managed to get peace, abundant, forcefully, dramatically in there, which are my words that I've gone in with. I've also managed to set the mood and the tone at the beginning. I've managed to use some alliteration with the F sound that runs through that second paragraph, so flared, fear, forcefully, flesh, and faster. I've also managed to use some quite good words that weren't, and techniques that weren't ones that I was planning to use, like suddenly is a good adverb. You've got emptiness versus greater weight, so that's a contrast, and the really nice verb collapsed. I've managed to use more of my words that are in green, so revive, power, erased, obscure, stubbornly, and competition. I've also managed to use lots of my techniques. So I've got the horse shivering in the blinding light, evaporating into emptiness, help him, help me, blah, 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 and then a couple at the top as well. So I've managed to use all of my techniques on this second page, which is amazing. I've also got some other good words like weak and dying, clung. I've got a one-line paragraph, which is what we were aiming for. You can also see from the yellow that I've used quite a lot of punctuation. And then if we just go across to the final page, I've got some more good words that I've just come up with in the exam. I've also got alliteration, keeping that F sound actually with felt, fingers and flicker. I've managed to use a couple of my planned words, and I've also managed to link the end and the start by repeating the idea of the horse and the rider laying as one, which echoes what I said at the beginning.
So what you can see from this is that I have managed to get my techniques in there. I managed to get all but one of my words in there. So I went in really planned to write this, and there were moments where this actually really helped me. Like the fact I was trying to get in the word competition actually gave me the idea of linking the man not dying to a kind of competition between him and death. So that was something that was really helpful to me because I was trying to get the word corrupt in there. I used that idea of their bond being stronger than death, so even death could not corrupt the strength of their bond. It was really helpful for me to have those words. So I hope that this has helped. Good luck with your own writing.